Hi everyone, it's Simon Keeling here, Sunday the 7th of April, and thanks again for watching weatherweb.net. Don't forget we're kept free of charge by the adverts that you see around the screen here. It's by you coming back and using the site and using the adverts that keeps the site completely free of charge, so thanks again for doing that. Now, this is the ensemble prediction for the next couple of weeks. Not much change really, and models now starting to fall in line. If you watched yesterday, you know the ECMWF was having a little bit of a wobble, but that now seems to be more in line with the GFS and also with the Canadian ideas. And we're building this idea of a southwesterly jet tending to develop, bringing more unsettled conditions, but then a ridge of high pressure building in for the second half of the month, and that's where we continue to go. So this is the temperature chart for London as predicted by the GFS ensemble, and you can see here that temperatures hold pretty steady through much of this week up to around about Friday, Saturday. Then we see this rise in temperatures taking us the next notch upwards, look for spring, getting up to 16 or 17 degrees. But just notice how unsettled it is too with these outbreaks of rain, particularly here towards the end of next week. And that little bart you can hear in the background there is the weather wolf, because he's looking forward to seeing a little bit of rain as well, and also the warming temperatures. You see, I only need to mention the warming temperatures and off he goes. And I know that some of you are new to watching the video, so if you're wondering who the weather wolf is, here he is. Yes, he's the dog that sniffs out the weather, the one and only WeatherWeb weather wolf. So, moving on. You see, you don't get this on any other weather forecast, do you? Moving on, this is the jet stream chart, valid for 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. And I want to show you the difference that the jet stream makes, the position of the jet stream. It's south of the country just at the moment. It's through here. Okay, these green colours here indicating where the wind speeds are sufficient to get into what we call a jet stream category. Now, the critical difference that's going to be taking place over the next week or two is that the jet is going to be moving its way further north. Now, through the winter, it's been split in two. We've had one section down here, we've had one section going over the top here, and that's partly what's created the cold weather. However, things are about to change as the whole system moves northwards to be somewhere like that, probably for the mid to the end part of April. And you can see how that progressed northwards. This is the chart for the 17th of April. So this is in 10 days' time. You can see here that by then the pattern of the jet stream is already starting to move northwards, something like that. And it's this shape that we need to get some warmer weather into the country, as well as dry weather too. But with that shape, there will be some rain affecting parts of Scotland, Western Ireland as well. And let's stick with the theme of the 17th, because this is the GFS ensemble forecast for 6 o'clock on the 17th. So high pressure's down here, we've got low pressure up here. Here's that southwesterly flow that we've just seen. And the jet stream here is shown by these colours being close together here. Look, where they're close together, those are the height lines, and where they're close together, you get the strongest winds. So the winds that are flowing through here, this is the jet stream just there. Compare that to the ECMWF for the same time, and ECMWF has got more resolution in it. This is the operational ECMWF, and that has high pressure to the south, it's got low pressure to the north. The jet stream here is flowing through something like that, so it's a more complicated pattern across the country, but this ridge that's in here is starting to get its way northwards. So there is some consistency between the charts. Now, if we just go forward, unfortunately ECMWF doesn't go that far ahead, but because we've got consistency between the charts, we can kind of project forward the GFS ensemble and see where it takes us. And what's interesting here, look, is it's building high pressure by the 22nd. So this is in a couple of weeks' time. It builds high pressure to the east of the country, high pressure to the west. We've got a ridge in here at 500 millibars, then a trough in the Atlantic and a ridge here through the British Isles. Now, what will probably happen is that trough will move through. It'll bring some rain to parts of Ireland, to parts of Scotland as well. But then what we'll find is the secondary ridge here building in back northeastwards. So probably ending up with a pattern something like that, where a big ridge builds into the country. It could be, you know, I mean, I'm reluctant to say this, but it could be a fine end to the month. And this is how the CFS sees it. Now, the CFS is initialised partly from the GFS ensemble. This is the forecast going forward for the next sort of 6 weeks. And what's interesting here is just to note this rise in temperature that CFS sees, exactly the same as the ensemble look through to next week. Then it brings off those temperatures again before picking them up again right at the very end of the month. Now, I think it's probably overdone this a little bit, this temperature fall. probably what we'll find is something of that sort of order there. It's interesting to note, look, how warm it's making it right at the very end of the month. And those of you who've been watching regularly will know that I've been showing you these charts. This is the CFS anomalies, 500 millibar anomalies. There's the British Isles under there. Now this is week 1, so this goes forward from the 7th of April through to the 13th. And what's interesting here is that there's our jet stream, there's our below normal heights, look through the country, bringing the unsettled spell of weather that we're about to get. Now, if we just scroll down into week 2, this is from the 14th to the 20th, and notice what's happened here. Look, high pressure's built out to the east, that's the ridge that we saw on the ensemble, low pressure out to the west, and look, there's the pattern of the jet stream that we saw on those charts. This is a really warming pattern. This would bring some fair conditions for this middle part of April, dry and warm. Now, as we get on to week 3, this is the period from the 21st to the 27th of April. Look, the ridge, what's happened is it's squeezed itself back through the country. This is showing signs of blocking again. There's our trough in the Atlantic here. Look, there's the trough in here. Here's the ridge going up through here. Now again, that's high pressure. This could be a fine spell of weather, you know. This really could be a fine spell of weather coming up from around the 16th or the 17th onwards. Notably warmer than it has been for many months. And then if we just look at week 4, so this is week 4 from the 28th of April through to the 4th of May, so getting towards the bank holiday weekend. Look, that high, you'll notice that the higher heights squeezed away back to the northeast, so blocking back in there, look. A ridge building over Europe with high pressure in here. But what we're finding is that block is squeezed out. We've got the jet coming back in through here. And what we have then is this block of high pressure in here with a trough down in here. So the flow is from the north across Scotland, which would bring some unsettled conditions, perhaps some rain to eastern coast. But probably we stay under the influence of high pressure towards the west. But what we would probably see is temperatures through April doing something like this in the middle of the month. We get a sudden rise, we get a peak going up, and then we see that fall off in temperatures coming through. And of course that's a similar sort of trace that we saw on the CFS temperature trace a few slides ago. So what I want you to take in today's video is this idea of a fine, possibly very warm end to April, and certainly dominated by dry weather after the mixed spell mid-month. We could actually be getting back on track here. Anyway, thanks again for watching weatherweb.net. Remember, we kept free of charge by the adverts that you see around the screen here, and by you coming back and using the site is what keeps us free of charge. So, from me, Simon Keeling, and the Weather Wolf, it's a bye for now, and keep the sun shining.